Welcome to Cause Before Symptom, uncovering the real cabal and spiritual forces that are controlling the world. And now, here is your host, James Carter.
Yes, it's that time. Welcome to Cause Before Symptom. I'm your host, James Carter. Today, November 11th, 2025, and tonight's episode is all about the wisdom war, why the sovereignty movement must grow up to take ground. You see, I've interviewed Russell Jay Gould twice. And what I got out of it was he did the right thing, but he didn't follow through. And who can blame him? Because he was captured by the CIA and tortured. And what follows is, in my opinion, a spiritual war that needs more than just filing for sovereignty and standing up in court. There has to be more. There has to be wisdom. There has to be a spiritual court backing you up along with God's army. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. How the sovereignty movement fell flat on its face and has no support to back it up whatsoever, as most Americans haven't even heard of it yet. And meanwhile, the government is stepping up their procedures to learn how to deal with a person when you pull them over and they say, I'm not asking questions. I'm not answering questions. So we're going to deal with all that tonight. And basically, hopefully, this show can reach a person who will take this to heart and practice it, because this is the only way we can get our freedoms back from the beast system if we do it correctly. And you've got to have God on your back, because this is a spiritual war. The devil is in control of all corporations, all countries, and all organizations. And this is what he does. And we have to have discernment here. So that's what we're talking about tonight. It's going to be a long show. Shout out to everybody on the live chat Rumble. Number one warrior is Boots Hafner stating, all right. Warriors, come out and pray, yay. Hello, Pastor James of the airwaves and creator of Elite Potion and friends with the Flame USA. Amen. How's it, fellow warriors and new listeners? Hit the thumbs up button. Thank you. Yes, Rumble doesn't care about anything but likes. That's how their algorithm works. So the more thumbs up or likes I get, the better. So if you're listening to the live, all you have to do is hit the X button, then hit thumbs up, and then go hit the button that's called live chat, and you won't lose your spot, I promise. Yes, number two warrior is Scorpion stating, hello all. What is up, Christopher? Good to have you here, buddy. And number three warrior is Surfer Wife saying, hey. Texas Militia Official, number three, saying howdy, from Texas, but moved. That is our good friend Zachary. And Robert Gertison is here stating, hi, y'all. What's up, Robert? And number six warrior is Upside of the Down stating, eyes wide open. Amen to that. And number seven warrior is Jeffrey saying, hey, y'all, wow, Trump is handing out $2,000 checks. Woohoo. Oh, wait, I still got to pay that back. Oh, you'll pay it back in a bad way. Wait till he switches from income tax to sales tax nationwide. Whew, things are going to get more and more spendy. Yeah. Surfer Wife says, giving out money, increasing inflation. Totally. We've got to put $2,000 into consumers' pockets so they can go spend the money and beef up the economy. Isn't that what they're doing? That's pretty much it. It's a farce, and it's not going to work. We're done with all of the numbers. Everyone is now just responding. Jeffrey says, do you think God has angels protecting certain locations from the devil and from his followers, meaning they can't go near it? Well, absolutely, but it depends on the area and who is praying in that area. You see, all it takes is one church practicing their own religion and understanding the Bible and what it says to do. Now, we're learning more with the Ethiopian canon, and it's going to give us more of an insight as to how to protect a certain area. But when you pray, you have to be specific, okay? You have to anoint state lines. You have to anoint county lines. You have to anoint city lines. And you have to take authority back from the devil. Then that church must constantly pray 24/7 with rotating people that pray to keep the angels there to guard what they've anointed. You see, that's what the witches do. That's what the warlocks do. And you're competing against that system. And believe it or not, the warlocks and witches and Satanists that are out there, they're way more dedicated to their God than most people are to Christianity, unfortunately. So you've got to step up your game. It's like in your own household. If you want to protect yourself and your family from the city that's under corruption, you can't just do it by yourself. You can't just go anoint your city lines and then declare that all the city belongs to me or God. It doesn't work that way. There are legalities that we have to learn from the Bible in order to get that city clean. And that's a whole nother show. I may maybe do that tomorrow night. Who knows? But thank you for the question, Jeffrey. Surfer Wife says, serious? How can God allow the devil to do that? Just curious. What? I don't remember what the question was. How can God allow the devil to do what? Sheila's here saying, sup, Buttercups. What's up, Sheila? And Jeffrey closes with, like the Garden of Eden, I would love to see it for myself and a diamond city. Supposedly the elites are living in them. Well, maybe. I don't know. But jurisdiction is important. And we have to understand that in a city where the people don't care about your religion, well, you're not really going to do much. It would be just like you and Lot living in Sodom. And Lot was a godly man, and yet there was nothing that he could do to protect that city. So you need to recruit. You need to get prayer warriors, and you need to fight against the devil, period. That's the only way that you can truly get your city back from the corruption. And how it works is it's spiritually. If a church is constantly praising and praying 24/7 in this little area, the power just grows. And people start to come in and hear about what they're doing, and they start to build faith. Surfer Wife says, how can the devil how can God allow the devil to run the world is what I meant. It's just for a short season, right? God's days are it's only been 6 days since he created all this crap. Seriously. It took him 6 days to create everything, and then he rested on the 7th. Then another 6 days is what happened. And we're at the 6th day right now. So how can God let the devil run the world? Well, the devil knew God's law, and he skirted around it. And then he ransomed us. He deceived Adam and Eve to get the title of the world so that he is the king that controls all weather, all, let's just call it natural things, the matter of the entire thing. And he had that control all the way up until Jesus took the keys from him, the keys to death and hell. So now, after the 1,000 years that he was in the pit, he's been loosed for a short time. And I believe that's 250 years. And it's almost over. Hallelujah. Sheila says, my game is so stepped up that I think if they gave me a Harry Potter book or GOT or Hunger Games, Game of Thrones. I would have believed that was my path. I'm not confused. I'm extremely pissed. Feels like a Q thing for me today. Wait for it. Sheila's pissed. Well, chill out. All's good. Don't worry about it. And if your game is stepped up, that's a good thing. That means you can fight the devil when the devil tries to deceive you. Remember, the Bible says all we have to do is just ignore the devil. Ignore him, and he will flee. That means ignore all those thoughts that says, hey, why don't you go to that porno shop? Hey, why don't, you know what I mean? All those thoughts. Just get rid of the thoughts and move on. I have to reset my Rumble, unfortunately. I don't know what happened, but, well, I froze like I always do. Every single time. Rumble hates me, but this is the only place I can do live where they don't shut me down. All right, let's get into breaking news.
Welcome to Shitty Breaking News with your host, James Carner, offering his shitty opinion.
Yes, it is my shitty opinion. Trump news at a glance. Top House Democrats vow to oppose shutdown bill. Oh, that means they can't do nothing. So government's going to be back up and running. So what happened to all the people saying that this is it? Government shut down, America screwed, bankruptcy? No. There are certain things that have to happen in prophecy, and it hasn't happened yet. So they're waiting just like we all are. Supreme Court extends pause over order requiring full SNAP benefits. Thanks, Supreme Court. You don't have a spine, do you? Not all people on SNAP are milking the system. So what are you doing? You're playing God, and you really need to quit and step up and do the right thing. Remember, all of you assholes, you put this all into motion, okay? You all agreed to have it. SNAP is there. So move forward. But this is it. This is how Satan works. Satan works this way. He loves it when you get angry and stressed. And the Supreme Court, they're all a bunch of Satanists. You're like, no, they can't be. A couple of them are Christian. No, they're not. They're not Christian like us. They're not. They're part of the beast system. And we have got to recognize that if we're ever going to be set free from all of this. Because, guys, the devil don't like you. And he wants to kill you. And you have to think about the politicians because they're working with them. They don't like you either. And they want to kill you. Because that's how they gain their power. Chuck Schumer plans to weather the storm. Well, he's getting a lot of flack from his own party. I expect them to get him to retire just like Nancy. Nancy? Oh, my God. She did all that evil, and she's going to get away with it. And now she's going to live, in California, drinking her wine, retired, after she did all of those horrible things, like well, you got to pass the bill first so we can read what's in it. Yeah, that's the same lady. Come on now. They get away with it. Once they retire, it's done. They're immune to getting busted. And she's going to be immune because, dude, she was awesome. I mean, the devil has a trophy for her waiting. Coloradans, they see a photograph of the Northern Lights across the state. So apparently Jesus is coming. There's this rumor, and I may do a show about it or not, that the Northern Lights are the entrance to Jesus and his kingdom. He's actually been here this whole time after the 1,000-year lockup of the devil. And that's God. I guess Jesus is in the north at the top, and he could be behind all that. I don't know, but I think it's a really cool thing. Spiritually, it could really be Jesus. So we will see. Duffy says more pain to come before air traffic is back to normal. Well, I didn't do it. What to know about Trump's plan to give Americans a $2,000 tariff dividend? Look, he wants your votes. He wants your vote of confidence. He wants you to think that he's a good guy. Once you get the $2,000 in your pocket, you're going to turn around. And what are you going to do? You're going to put in a TV, and then you're going to put the TV up on your wall, and it's going to continue to tell you what to do. If I were you, I would take the $2,000 and invest it. Be like the good steward and invest it in, let's say, I don't know, go to Charles Schwab, even though it's a wicked company. Go invest that money, because they can take your $2,000 and you can earn like 6 to 9% on top of it, and leave it there. Take Trump's little tariff dividend and open up a retirement account for yourself. You'll be glad you did. And there's really nothing else for the news except for that crap. So there you have it. All right, when we come back after this commercial, we're going to talk about the wisdom war. Why the sovereignty movement must grow up to take ground. Stick around.
Do you have tax burdens? Do you carry personal liability? If so, let me tell you why you have tax burdens and personal liability. And if you stick with me until the end, I'll share a simple solution to reduce the burdens you carry. When you put assets in your name, you also carry the liability. And by setting up a corporation, LLC, or partnership, you also carry the liability for the share of ownership you have in these organizations. So when you receive a W-2 form, 1099, or K-1 at the end of each year, that shows your liability for the assets you have carried in your name or your business name. The flow of liability works this way. You get a job, you take money in your name. When you are a contractor, you take money in your name. When you begin a business, you take money in the business name, which is set up with you as the owner. Nelson Rockefeller quoted, "The secret to success is to own nothing but control everything." He said this because when you own something in your name, you also own the liabilities. Introducing the solution. Begin an unincorporated association and remove assets out of your name while remaining in control and management of them. An unincorporated association is a state-registered entity that you can put assets into, is member-based and not tied to your name, has a tax-exempt EIN number, is private and not found when doing an online search. Whether you receive a 1099 or K-1 under your name, consider setting up your own unincorporated association and allow the association to be the owner of your assets and free yourself from the burden of personal liability. P.S. Join our affiliate program and receive payment for referrals.
Now we're back. All right. Tonight we're going to be talking about the wisdom war. Why the sovereignty movement must grow up to take ground. Well, there's a serpent in the registry, folks. Now, they said and they thought that the war would be won with paper, right? This is the elite. The elite thought the courtroom was neutral ground, that judges would hear the truth if it was spoken loudly enough. Well, no, actually, that's not the elite. That's us, the people. We thought we could win the war with paper. We thought we could win the war with sovereignty. We thought we could win the war by standing up for ourselves. And we believed that the beast would tremble at properly filed affidavits, or that a man with the right syntax could overturn centuries of control. Well, we were wrong. Not because we lacked courage, but because we lacked wisdom. The sovereignty movement was born from a holy impulse, make no mistake. The yearning to be free, to break the chains of false identity, to rise above the straw man, the trust, the maritime contract that turned men into chattel. That instinct was righteous. The problem wasn't the cry, it was the strategy. Because Babylon doesn't fall to passion. It falls to precision. Every system that rises to challenge the beast becomes a target. The militias were infiltrated. The churches were infiltrated. And the sovereignty movement, perhaps the most dangerous of them all, was infiltrated from the moment it began. Agents of confusion were planted. Pied Pipers were elevated. The wise were silenced, And the remnant was left to wander the courtroom, hoping the judge would have mercy on a man without standing. People followed leaders who taught them how to file for sovereignty, but not how to fight. How to speak in code, but not how to discern the spirits behind the code. They were told to reclaim their birthright, yet they were never shown the real courtroom, the heavenly registry where true sovereignty actually begins. And if they want proof this is a pattern, let them look up what happened to the Tea Party. In 2009, it began with real fire. It was a grassroots rebellion against taxes, tyranny, and the banking elite. Patriots gathered under banners of liberty, sound money, and constitutional government. For a moment, the establishment trembled, just for a moment. But within 2 years, it was gone. What happened to it? Not because it failed, but because it was captured. Republican elites slapped the Tea Party logo on their war chests while voting for the same corrupt policies. Media infiltrators painted the movement as racist and unhinged. Got to use that race card. Think tanks redirected its anger into support for foreign wars and corporate bailouts. And the revolution was completely absorbed, diffused, and sold back to the people as a campaign merchandise. Remember, this was under Obama's watch. He was the one that helped destroy the Tea Party. The cry to audit the Fed, remember that? Became a fundraiser for Goldman Sachs. This is how the beast disarms revolutions. Not with tanks, but with talk. Not with bullets, but with branding. And now the sovereignty movement is walking into the exact same trap. Some of these leaders may have started with pure hearts, but purity without power is just a signal flare. And when those who claim to hold the keys refuse to raise up defenders, sovereign lawyers, spiritual watchmen, military liaisons, then the truth is either compromised or contained. A dead-end map leading nowhere. This movement doesn't need more declarations. It needs a priesthood. It needs trained sons and daughters who understand land law, sea law, and air law, who can walk into a courtroom, a covenant, or a military tribunal and speak with authority. Not from YouTube, but from alignment. Not as rebels, but as rightful heirs. Because sovereignty isn't something you scream in a courtroom. It's something you carry into battle. And battles are not won by civilians with paperwork. They're won by the wise who understand the serpent's game, who've studied the enemy's language, and who fear God more than they fear the system. Now, the beast doesn't fear your filings. It fears your wisdom. And this is the wisdom war. And the remnant must grow up if it wants to take ground. Now, every time a movement rises that truly threatens the beast system, it is met not just with opposition, but with design. Babylon doesn't just react, it plans. It waits, it studies. And when the people finally awaken, when they begin to reclaim their God-given authority, challenge unlawful jurisdiction, and walk towards sovereignty, the trap is already in place. This is not theory. It's history. The federal government has long had a playbook for dismantling domestic resistance. Operation COINTELPRO in the 60s used infiltration, blackmail, media distortion, and internal sabotage to destroy civil rights groups, native movements, and anti-war coalitions. Infiltrators were inserted to mislead, radicalize, or scandalize these groups from within. And once their credibility was shattered or their leaders neutralized, the public lost faith and the movement collapsed. The same tactics were used on the militia movements of the 1980s and 90s. Men gathered to defend their constitutional rights, study land patents, and prepare for federal tyranny. But one by one, undercover agents were planted, informants fed disinformation, provocateurs incited violence, and when the moment came, the media swooped in with the pre-written narrative. Domestic extremism, anti-government radicals, dangerous white supremacists. Waco, Ruby Ridge, Oklahoma City. These events weren't isolated. They were controlled detonations designed to scare the public and decapitate the movement. According to the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General, 26 FBI confidential human sources were present in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021. Of those, 3 were officially tasked by FBI field offices to attend and report on individuals suspected of domestic terrorism. Well, the remaining 23 were present, but not under direct FBI assignment for that day. Huh? The report states that none of these CHSs were authorized to enter the Capitol building or restricted areas, nor were they instructed to engage in or encourage illegal activity. However, at least one CHS did enter the Capitol, and another breached restricted zones. Actions taken without FBI approval. This is how they got away with it. Oh, we didn't do it. The OIG emphasized that while the FBI had no official no officially deployed undercover agents embedded in the crowd, multiple informants were present, and some engaged in behavior that blurred the line between observation and participation. In essence, the official paperwork distances the Bureau from their actions, stating they were not tasked, not authorized, even though they were clearly on site and involved in the unfolding events. What is Kash Patel doing about it? Nothing. In fact, he's standing up for the FBI, saying they're upright. Well, what about all those 26 informants that were not authorized to be there? Why isn't he going after them and putting him publicly saying the FBI overstepped their line? But he's not. See, the beast never makes war with your body first. It makes war with your narrative. And the same strategy is now being used against the sovereignty movement. People who reclaim their birthright, reject the straw man fiction, and walk into court declaring themselves living men often find themselves mocked, jailed, or ignored. Not because they're wrong, but because the system was already waiting for them. Many judges have been trained to view these arguments now as paper terrorism. Courtrooms have been instructed to shut down sovereign language as frivolous, delusional, or even hostile. Why? Well, because it's a threat to the legal illusion that props up the entire financial system. But the trap doesn't just catch the innocent, it actually recruits the unwise. Many in the movement unintentionally become part of the beast's dialectic. They learn just enough law to be dangerous, but not enough to win. They become loud, proud, and procedurally blind. Some are misled by controlled teachers who offer complex theories without practical remedy. Others are simply burned out, left to wander a wilderness of filings and forums while their homes, families, and faith fall apart. See, the enemy wants you awakened, but not aligned. It wants you passionate, but not prepared. The blueprint is to turn every revolutionary into a cautionary tale, to bait people into the open, then make examples of them in courtrooms and headlines, to bury the truth path under the noise of failed attempts and bad actors. So that way the system survives and the public forgets. So what's the answer? I believe it begins with wisdom, with discernment. with recognizing that this is not just a legal battle, it's a war of registry, ritual or jurisdiction, fought across land, sea, and air. The trap is real, but so is the pattern. And once the pattern is exposed, the remnant can stop reacting and start strategizing. The courtroom is not a classroom. It is not a place to test theories or flex philosophical muscles. It is a battlefield governed by strict rituals, hardened operators, and invisible lines of jurisdiction. Walking in untrained with nothing but a printout and hope is not bravery, it's suicide. And yet, that is what most of the sovereignty movement has become. A parade of the unprepared, stepping into the lion's den under the illusion that truth alone will protect them. But truth without strategy is a martyr's song. The system that these sovereigns are trying to confront is not only corrupt, it is engineered. It has layered defenses, corporate veils, maritime overlays, federal statutes, and silent jurisdictions. It has judges who act as administrators, prosecutors who act as policy enforcers, and clerks who act as bouncers. You don't wake up and beat that overnight. And yet the movement has birthed a culture of overconfidence. People watch a few videos, attend a few seminars, and suddenly believe that they can declare themselves exempt from a system they barely understand. They speak of common law, but can't speak or explain venue. They cite UCC codes, but can't distinguish between filing a lien and perfecting it. They walk into court and insist that they are not the name on the paper, not realizing that just by engaging at the wrong jurisdictional level, they've already forfeited the battle. It's not just what you say, it's where you say it, how you say it, and to whom you say it to. The system runs on form, not truth, and without the discernment to navigate it, even the most accurate claim will be dismissed or worse, weaponized. This is where the sovereignty movement has become theater. Just loud declarations, ritualistic phrases, courtroom speeches designed more for YouTube clips than actual remedy. And when it fails, and it often does, what remains? Total confusion, despair, and a hardened system that now more alert than ever. And the truth is, most sovereigns aren't challenging the beast, they're entertaining it. Just like they laughed, Donald Rumsfeld laughed at Russell as they hauled him off to his cell and torture him for 90 days. They're entertaining it. And those who led from them there, knowingly or not, are sending lambs to the slaughter. We're talking about having wisdom here. We're talking about forming a resistance without making a noise. And this is not a call to abandon sovereignty, not at all. It's a good thing. It's smart and it needs to be done. But this is a call to qualify it, to elevate it, to train it like a priesthood, not perform it like a protest. Do protests work? Do they work in Europe? Do they get rid of the bankers? No. They just cool down for a bit and then go back again with another angle to get what they want. You would not send a new recruit into battle without weapons and armor. So why are we sending untrained men and women into legal war zones with nothing but their passion and a misunderstood affidavit? Sure, some win cases against debt and property rights when standing with the sovereignty angle. And some have closed the courts down with evidence of a corporation instead of government. However, the beast system just creates another LLC and moves their office down one door. There's a new address. After the verdict, the sovereign didn't take the court to expose it. Until the movement raises up true legal tacticians, spiritual sentinels, and disciplined educators, it will remain a spectacle, and the beast will keep applauding from the bench. Russell Jay Gould, or Russell J. Gould, is one of the most controversial and polarizing figures in the sovereignty movement. In 1999, he claimed that when the U.S. Constitution was effectively suspended under perpetual bankruptcy proceedings, he stepped in to claim continuity of government by filing specific documents with the Universal Postal Union and other international bodies, asserting legal and jurisdictional standing through the office of the Postmaster General under a reconstructed grammar-based legal system known as parse syntax grammar or quantum grammar. Now, Gould's filings, complex and largely inaccessible to the public, assert that he secured Title IV flag jurisdiction, restructured legal contracts to eliminate fraud in language, and reestablished lawful authority under a post office system independent of existing corporate governments. He has claimed to have presented these claims at the Pentagon and later to the United Nations. But despite his declarations, the beast system remained intact, hasn't stopped. Courts did not stand down. Governments did not acknowledge his authority. And the average person seeking remedy was left confused, overwhelmed, and legally unprotected. Now, when I interviewed Gould twice, it became clear to me he does not operate under Christian spiritual authority. He openly admitted he was not a believer in Christ, nor did he claim alignment with divine law as understood through Scripture. His mission, by his own framing, was legal, but just not spiritual. And this is the crux of the problem. The enemy he sought to fight is not just a legal fiction. It is a spiritual machine. And Babylon is not merely administrative. It's covenantal. And no man can dismantle the beast unless he first kneels before the king who already overcame it. That's Jesus. Even symbolically, the mission misfired. When Gould entered the Pentagon and claimed to seize the Title IV flag, the flag that represents the Republic when flown properly upright and without fringe, he reportedly took possession of what it appeared to be the gold-fringed maritime flag, often associated with military or admiralty jurisdiction. Now, the vertical striped civil flag of the United States of America, the peace flag, was left untouched. In sovereignty and military circles, this is a major distinction. The gold fringe indicates emergency, military rule, or international venue, not lawful civilian governance. So he already started off making a mistake. And then came the strategic error. Rather than presenting his claim to the constitutional military or petitioning Congress for recognition, he bypassed internal enforcement and brought his filings to the United Nations, a globalist, corporate, unelected body that functions under the same admiralty commercial structure he claimed to oppose. In effect, he traded national remedy for international stagecraft. And the court of Babylon is not the place to restore Zion. But perhaps Gould's greatest failure was this. He built no army, no corporations of sovereign-trained lawyers, no legal infrastructure, no discipled movement that could defend, expand, and enforce the jurisdiction he claimed to reclaim. Instead, he left behind a fractured following, struggling to grasp the complexity of quantum grammar, and left to fend for themselves in hostile courts that had no interest in entertaining syntax or statute. And yet, many still follow him, not because they understand, but because he offered the illusion of remedy in a world starving for justice. What's happened since 1999? Nothing. The beast system continues to ravage. Now, the tragedy is not that Gould may have been wrong about everything. In fact, he may have found real cracks in the system, real legal loopholes, real spiritual clues. But knowledge hoarded is knowledge that cannot liberate. Instead of training the remnant to take the courts to court, to fight with spiritual and legal coordination, he retreated into secrecy, symbolism, and complexity. The result? A registry without enforcement, a truth without traction. Now, this is not an attack on a man. It's a warning to a movement. Remember, we're seeking wisdom here in the wisdom war. You cannot overthrow the beast system with syntax. You need standing, structure, and spirit. You need lawyers who know land law, commanders who know the chain of command, and priests who know the courtroom of heaven. Sovereignty must become more than theory. It must become order, discipline, and discipleship. Otherwise, it'll remain a ritual, observed by those who never rule. Gould may have taken a banner, but the remnant must now take the gates. The modern courtroom is not what it appears to be. What most people believe is a hall of justice governed by common law is, in fact, an administrative tribunal governed by commercial contract. Well, it does not serve the people. It serves the corporation. It does not hear the truth. It enforces code. And when the average man or woman walks in believing they are standing on the Constitution, they quickly discover they are standing on a pier, under maritime law, under contract, under control. This is the great deception. The court is not a court in the biblical sense. It is a stage. It's ritual theater, a scripted performance where roles are assigned before anyone speaks a word. You are the defendant, not because you committed a crime, but because your straw man, the legal fiction tied to your birth certificate, was summoned by the system. And unless you know how to separate yourself from that fiction, unless you know how to change the jurisdiction, you have already consented. Now, so you understand what the straw man is. The straw man is a legal fiction. It's a corporate entity, a company, an organization, created by the government using your name in all capital letters, typically at the time of your birth certificate was issued. Now, this entity is not you, the living, breathing man or woman made in God's image. It is a trust or vessel that exists on paper, used by the system to interact with contracts, courts, and commerce. Now, through this fictional identity, the government can impose taxes, fines, debts, and laws without directly violating your natural rights. The court summons the straw man, and if you unknowingly answer to that name, you consent to represent the fiction, thereby placing yourself under their jurisdiction. Now, in essence, the straw man is the beast's legal avatar of you, a name they control. Unless you learn how to separate yourself from it and stand as the living soul, not the dead entity. Now, the system cheats us on consent by assuming it through silence, ignorance, or implied action. From birth, they register us into their corporate system without full disclosure, issuing a birth certificate that creates the straw man entity. Then, using that as the legal interface for all interactions. Now, when we get a driver's license or sign a bank form or respond to a summons in court using the name in all capital letters, we unknowingly consent to contract under their jurisdiction. But true consent requires full knowledge, voluntary agreement, and no coercion, none of which are present. Now, the beast system thrives on presumed consent, hiding behind complex language, hidden contracts, and public ignorance. And because we don't rebut or rebut, object or assert our true standing, they claim our silence as agreement. And this is how they rule, not by force, but by fraudulently claimed authority, all masked as law. Now, I noticed that Sheila was saying, hey, this stuff is old news, stating that, if I read it correctly, where did it say? Anyway, I thought I saw Sheila say something to the effect. Yeah, you're too late with the laws and sovereignty, James. And then you said, frick, man. No, not late at all. In fact, I'm trying to help those who are entering into the Internet of Things, the IoT. You see, we already failed the sovereignty movement of reality or matter. We need to learn from those mistakes when we move into the Internet of Things, when they create the virtual world. Right? We have got to understand when we step into a machine in a virtual reality world, what our rights are then, because they're going to make it so that they have full control over you and control your avatar and pray for you. So it's important to understand that it's not just this movement is dead, although it is on earth when it comes to matter, but when it comes to ones and zeros, electronics, and a virtual world, we need to understand our rights there too as well. We need discernment. We need to build a priesthood to fight against the enemy. And that's something that the sovereignty movement has not done. Now, judges today do not serve as neutral arbiters of truth, or arbitrators of truth. They are administrators, managing the interests of the state's corporate framework, not a country. Prosecutors act as billing agents for the state, not a country. Clerks act as gatekeepers to the rules of venue and entry. And once you step into that space and respond to the name of the docket, you are no longer a living man, you are a debtor. A fiction, a vessel being taxed, processed, or disposed of under the codes of commerce. This is why so many sovereigns lose, not because they're wrong, but because they're untrained. They walk in thinking it's about righteousness, but the system is only measuring compliance. It doesn't care about morality. It doesn't care about natural law. It cares about whether you signed the right paper, filed at the right time, used the right format, and responded according to their script. And when sovereigns fail to play the part, the court retaliates not to punish the truth, but to preserve the illusion of order. Judges threaten jail time not because they are offended, but because the entire system is built on unchallenged flow. When someone challenges jurisdiction, venue, or standing, the entire machine stutters. And that's why the beast must strike hard to keep others from watching. But the issue runs even deeper than codes and procedures. The courtroom itself is a ritual space, modeled more after ecclesiastical proceedings than civic ones. The judges wear a black robe. The bar separates the holy from the profane, and the language is archaic and stylized. These are not by accident. They are remnants of an older priesthood repackaged as modern law. The sovereign who enters that space without understanding this spiritual architecture has already stepped into a false temple with no authority to stand. And that's why the beast still wins, because it has merged its legal system with its spiritual dominion. Most patriots are trying to beat the court on paper while the enemy has claimed the altar beneath it. Right. Not only, or the only way to win in this environment is not just to study the law itself, but to understand the courtroom as a spiritual stronghold. The remnant must stop sending warriors into legal war zones without armor, meaning without praying with them. We need sovereigns who understand trust law, maritime law, and spiritual law. We need advocates who can challenge venue without contempt, invoke standing without rebellion, and hold the court accountable to God's order, not just man's code. And until then, the courtroom will remain the beast's domain, not because it's undefeatable, but because the people still work in as defendants and walk in there as defendants instead of stepping in as sons of the Most High. Again, I'm a pastor. I got to see things from a Christianity point of view. And I like Russell. I think it's a great guy. And what he did was profound and beautiful. And I hope he recognizes the spiritual part so he can make that change. And since he has the Title IV flag and the postmaster position, he can take authority with Jesus. Governments around the world are no longer reacting to the sovereignty movement. They're actually managing it now. Go look it up. Through formal advisories, intelligent briefings, and coordinated law enforcement strategies, the beast system has absorbed the challenge into its architecture. They're now labeling it, cataloging it, and neutralizing it through policy. And what once emerged as a decentralized cry for freedom has now been defined as a security threat. And that definition is being exported globally. In fact, those who claim sovereignty are now considered terrorists. In the United States, the FBI officially designated sovereign citizens as a domestic terrorism threat, alleging that they pose risk through paper terrorism, courtroom disruptions, and resistance to law enforcement authority. This is why I never signed up to Russell's thing and gave him my fingerprint. I didn't want to be a domestic terrorism threat. Law enforcement agencies are now trained to recognize and respond to sovereign tactics, such as refusal to identify, invocation of the straw man language, or attempts to assert common law jurisdiction. And police manuals and legal courses have been updated with specific protocols on how to de-escalate, detain, or discredit individuals using these arguments. So the courtroom now sees such filings not as petitions but as red flags. The sovereign movement, in other words, has been turned into a category within the system's threat matrix. It's dead. Because they didn't use Jesus and pray about it before they just moved in. And it often makes me wonder what if Russell was the CIA getting a hold of all this stuff, getting in front of it before it finally leaks out? What if there was a movement before Russell and he and his partner David jumped into it as paid opposition? For even revealing this strategy has gone global, countries like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, they've been briefed, either directly or indirectly, by Washington and allied legal institutions on how to handle the export of sovereign citizen ideology under the parallel banner of freemen of the land. And in each of these nations, legal systems have been armed with guidelines to preempt, mock, and nullify sovereign-style filings. Yeah. Courts are instructed to treat such arguments as pseudo-legal nonsense, and law enforcement has been authorized to view participants as potential domestic threats, regardless of their actual intent. The movement's key terms, like living man, natural law, and UCC, have been cataloged and surveilled, and legal defense databases are monitoring all across multiple jurisdictions. What was that guy's name? I think he died. He claimed he was a CIA operative and he worked under the Trump administration during his first 4 years. David something. Anyway, his wife and him, they were claiming sovereignty, and his wife went to jail and they couldn't claim sovereignty to get her out. David Straight. Yeah. And I heard a rumor that he died, like of a heart attack. I don't believe he was working for Trump. I don't believe that he was trying to set us free through this movement. And the reason being is because I reached out to him and he put me far away from him. Didn't want to have anything to do with me. Now, that doesn't mean anything really. It could just mean, hey, he's just busy, but I was offering my services for free because I believed in what he was doing. I was ignorant on the whole movement and ignorant on the beast system and how they're really good at bringing people like David Straight to do all these seminars to get everybody to believe in the Q movement. Well, since I've done my research on Q, I've changed my story. I can't go down that road anymore because I believe that the devil has every exit blocked off. So we have to be careful. And this is how the beast owns the opposition too. It does not ban it, it defines it. It teaches the enforcers how to spot it, how to isolate it, and how to drain it of power. It turns real resistance into a cartoon of itself, and that is easily dismissed in court and easily reported by media. And what began as a grassroots awakening has been repackaged as a behavioral profile, so that judges, police, and even international bodies can treat it not as a legal challenge, but as a threat to order. This is why I'm coming up with this show, because I think it's important for us to stop, think, pray, discern. And this is why wisdom is essential, folks, because every time the remnant steps forward with passion, but no strategy, the system records, categorizes, and updates its playbook. The sovereignty movement hasn't been stopped, it's been domesticated, defined on their terms, and archived under known threat vectors. Well, the beast smiles, not because it fears the movement, but because it already wrote the training manual on how to handle it. So the sovereignty movement, like every genuine grassroots awakening, has been infiltrated. Not just by critics or media narratives, but by carefully placed agents, decoys, and false teachers who operate under the banner of freedom while knowingly serving the beast. This is not a theory. It is the documented pattern of every resistance that ever posed a real threat to centralized control. And the most dangerous infiltrators aren't always the ones wearing badges or wires. They're the ones holding microphones, teaching half-truths, redirecting energy, feeding the remnant just enough truth to believe in, but not enough to truly act. This is the controlled opposition playbook, and it operates on multiple levels. First, it raises up a charismatic personality who appears to be challenging the system. People who speak with boldness, offer unique insights, and inspire of hope. But instead of building real infrastructure, legal support teams, spiritual alignment, or remedy beyond paper, they create movements that never mature. They speak endlessly of status correction, strawman theory, UCC filings, and redemption accounts, but they never train anyone to argue jurisdiction in court or to create enforceable remedy within the three realms of land, sea, and air. Then comes the confusion. These gatekeepers flood the space with hyper-complex language, mathematical grammar systems, or realms of paperwork no average person can parse. They claim to hold secret keys, yet never unlock the door. They promise remedy, but only after a $500 seminar or if you sign under the authority. And, while well-meaning people exhaust their savings and study for years trying to crack the code, the beast continues to harvest consent. Because while the people were studying syntax, they forgot to challenge standing. Meanwhile, the legal system and media work hand in hand to frame the entire movement as lunacy. They amplify the most fringe actors, especially the ones with incomplete or dangerous strategies, and use them to discredit the legitimate grievances beneath it all. I don't think this is accidental. I think it's managed dialectic. So let the truth tellers speak, but surround them with noise. That's what they do. And let the sovereign rise, but make sure that they're either incoherent or radicalized. See, they let them, and then they ridicule them. And what about those who begin to make real progress? Those who start raising up sovereign-trained lawyers, building legal remedy, or marrying spiritual discernment with lawful standing? Well, they are either silenced, disbarred, audited, or absorbed. This is how the beast neutralizes threats, not through censorship, but through strategic corruption of credibility. So the goal isn't to stop the sovereignty movement, it's to own it, to manage it, to channel it into rabbit holes, paperwork, rituals, personal cults, endless status correction traps that never actually transfer jurisdiction or produce remedy in court. So this isn't about sovereignty. It's ritual containment. And this is why discernment is critical. The remnant, that's you and me, the Christians who are walking the walk. We must learn to test the spirits, not just in the church, but in the courtroom, the internet live stream, and the legal seminar. Not everyone with the declaration is a deliverer. Not everyone with the flag is under the kingdom. And not every teacher quoting law is standing on truth. If the movement is going to survive, it must graduate. It must reject the breadcrumbs of false leaders and begin baking the bread of substance. It must build real schools, real priesthoods, and real remedy, not just rhetoric. Build real schools, sovereign schools where you go to learn about the straw man, learn about the corporations and how they took over in 1876, learn about the banking system, learn about how central banks work, learn about the tri-city problem that we have with Washington, D.C., London, and the Vatican. Because controlled opposition doesn't just want to delay your victory, it wants to brand your failure, so the rest of the world never follows your path again. So this is why I believe that every movement that started and died in the sovereign movement is because they did not have spiritual legal grounding behind them. They did not have the army of God. And before the sovereignty movement was infiltrated, co-opted, and neutralized, the militias were basically the prototype. The state learned long ago that you don't need to arrest a movement to destroy it. You only need to guide it into failure. The same pattern used against the constitutional militias in the 80s and 90s is now being used against sovereign citizens, state nationals, and common law advocates because it worked the first time. After Vietnam and Watergate, a growing number of veterans, landowners, and constitutionalists began forming local militias, not to wage war, but to defend the Bill of Rights, to educate their communities and prepare for the increasing federal overreach. These men knew the difference between the republic and the corporation. They studied the Constitution, and many understood the deeper layers of admiralty law and fiat currency fraud. They were organized, trained, and grounded in both civic duty and spiritual conscience. So what did the beast do? It infiltrated them. David Wynn Miller, Russell Jay Gould's former partner in the Quantum Grammar Sovereignty Project, is a textbook example of how the beast infiltrates a movement from within. No, 1876, that was the second bankruptcy. The Rothschilds got the first. Sheila was saying 1876. I thought it was 1776. 1776 is when we became a country, officially. On 4th of July, Independence Day. But a few years later, the Rothschilds put in a central bank because we spent all our money. We had to pay it back. And then 100 years later, after we kicked the Rothschilds out because we realized they were screwing us like they always do, we had to bring them back because in 1876, we filed for bankruptcy again. And then after that, we filed for bankruptcy one more time with the Rothschilds in 1913. 3 times. So David Wynn Miller, David-Wynn:Miller. That's their syntax grammar, which is cool, but really hard to understand to the common people. I understand it. That's fine, but I'm not. I'm a brainiac. I'm a computer nerd. These kinds of things go hand in hand with me, but not the commoner. Once seen as the co-architect of the parse syntax grammar system, David, Russell's partner, eventually became a destabilizing force, entangling the movement in deeper confusion, internal rivalry, and spiritual misalignment. Perhaps most telling is the credible claim that David was later found working with Clinton-connected legal entities, even offering linguistic services to global legal teams. This is not conspiracy, it's a pattern. A man who once declared war on the system ultimately lent his tools to fortify it. And whether by compromise, coercion, or ego, David's alignment with political elites revealed what the beast does best. It doesn't always kill its enemies, it converts them. And what began as and he also died of cancer, by the way, out of the blue. And what began as a righteous mission to expose legal fraud ended with one of its founders whispering in the ears of those who benefit most from that fraud. Infiltration complete. Rinse, lather, repeat for the CIA. Federal agencies like the FBI and ATF began embedding informants and provocateurs into these groups, men who talked bigger than they acted, men who encouraged violence or spoke of sedition in ways designed to trigger surveillance and raids. Some were real patriots pushed into desperation. Others were handlers, placed to bait a reaction. And what followed was a series of engineered tragedies like Ruby Ridge, Waco, Oklahoma City. They weren't isolated events. They were the controlled implosions. Controlled implosions of a legitimate movement detonated in public to rewrite the narrative. By the end of the 90s, the term militia no longer evoked constitutional duty. It evoked extremism, white nationalism, and domestic terror. The beast had won not by defeating the militias in battle, but by poisoning their image and breaking their infrastructure. Those who survived retreated into silence, confusion, or compromise. And now the same thing is happening to the sovereignty movement. The language of redemption, birthright, and jurisdiction is being used, recorded, categorized, and weaponized. Patriot movements that once were focused on education and lawful remedy are now framed as conspiracy hubs. Social media accounts are tracked, filings are logged, and when the wrong person says the right thing, the courts pounce, not to correct the record, but to make an example of. And just like with the militias, provocateurs have already entered the camp, encouraging rash filings, aggressive confrontations, and legal suicide. Why? Because the beast learns, it evolves, and it's already practiced this play before. But the deeper tragedy is this: we didn't learn. The Bible says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." If you're not following the Bible or the Ethiopian canon, you're not going to win against the devil. The remnant saw what happened to the militias but didn't adapt. The sovereignty movement grew louder but not wiser, bolder but not more disciplined. And the beast expected this, and it was ready. And it ate our lunch and popped the bag. And this is why we must mature. The goal is not to avoid confrontation, it's to win it on ground that the beast doesn't control. Spiritual ground. He's just leasing this earth right now. He doesn't own it. God does. He's the prince, not the king. And that means building structure before exposure. That means strategy before protest and alignment before declaration. The movement must not be baited into another Ruby Ridge. It must not produce another fall guy, another martyr whose death is used to discredit truth, just like David Strait and his wife, who was still in prison because the beast system argued their way out of her sovereignty. We don't need another militia movement either. We need a priesthood with rank. We need a lawful remnant who knows the traps, remembers the pattern, and is wise enough to break the cycle. And to truly understand the battlefield, the remnant must understand the three jurisdictions that govern this world: land, sea, and air. Not the three branches of government like paid informant Derek Johnson has been preaching. Washington, D.C. is a company. It's a legal corporation that controls you. These are not poetic metaphors. They are the spiritual and legal arenas through which power flows. Every courtroom, every contract, every claim of authority traces back to one of those dominions. Either heaven or hell, one or the other. And the tragedy of the sovereignty movement is that it usually only sees one or two, never the full structure. Now, land represents the domain of the living, men and women created by God, standing on soil endowed with rights that no man or government can lawfully take. This is the realm of common law, property rights, community governance, and the unalienable freedoms spelled out in founding charters. This is where true sovereignty is meant to stand, the living man or woman in dominion under divine law. The sea represents the domain of commerce, contract, and control. This is maritime and admiralty law, the system of international trade, bills of lading, birth certificates, and insurance-based identity. The sea is fluid, deceptive, and layered in codes. Here, the straw man reigns. Your name in all capital letters, your corporate fiction, your legal person. When you enter the courtroom without declaring venue, they presume you are under the sea's jurisdiction. You're a vessel. You're not a soul. And most sovereign arguments fall and fail because they are made at sea without ever reclaiming dry ground. And finally, air, which no one talks about. Russell never talks about air. David Straight never talked about air. Derek Johnson never talked about air. Him and the Q movement. Air is the highest court. It is the domain of spirit, covenant, and divine jurisdiction. This is where true law originates. Not from statutes, but from righteousness. Not from bureaucracies, but from the throne of God. Air is where the enemy launched his rebellion. It is where Jesus Christ declared victory. And it is where the remnant must now learn to operate. For if you win on land and navigate the sea, but do not stand rightly in the air, you may gain temporary remedy, but not eternal authority. The tri-court system is how the beast rules. He entangles men in maritime law and strips them of land, rights, and then cloaks his rule in religious symbolism to mimic air authority. Babylon thrives by keeping men in the wrong court, speaking the wrong language, wearing the wrong title. And this is why courtrooms are shaped like temples. Like temples, cathedrals, churches. Why judges wear black robes. Why the bar separates the congregation from the high altar. You are not just being judged, you are being processed through a counterfeit priesthood unless you know how to change venue. When you walk into a court, you're not walking into land and sea. You're walking into spirituality court. And this is where Satan has the knowledge that you don't. And this is where the sovereignty movement must grow up. Pull the thumb out of your mouth. Filing paperwork in a sea court while claiming land rights accomplishes nothing. Quoting scripture in a courtroom without establishing standing in the air will fall flat. Sovereignty is not just about escape. It is about jurisdictional mastery. And you must know where you are, who you are, and under whose authority that you stand. The remnant must raise up a generation of sovereigns who are fluent in all three courts. Men and women who can navigate property law, maritime contracts, and spiritual covenants. Advocates who can move seamlessly through courts, from courtroom to pulpit, from affidavit to altar. Because the beast isn't just a legal construct. It is a spiritual counterfeit of God's government. And it must be dismantled at all levels, not just one. Until we learn to stand in land, sea, and air, we are fighting only with part of the map. And the beast loves nothing more than watching the righteous die in the wrong court. And he laughs at you like he laughed at Adam in the cave when the devil called out to him and said, "Hey, it's me. Let's come back to Eden." He goes, "Okay, sounds great." And then he laughed at him and said, "Look how easy it is to trick you, Adam. You're such an idiot." Sheila says, "I wish I could just eat some popcorn and watch the movie. Reality stinks, but at least I'm in it, navigating through properly." Well, no. We're not supposed to eat our popcorn. We're supposed to do something about it. God is going to call the righteous remnant to order and they're going to do something about it. And if it's stirring in your heart, like, man, this is rumbling, this is where I belong, then start learning, reading, educating yourself, if that's where God wants you. But what I'm stating right now is the sovereignty movement died because it wasn't spiritual. It was land and water. They didn't understand the paperwork. They didn't understand their real rights as a child of the Most High. Now, the sovereignty movement has no shortage of declarations, affidavits, or notices. The shelves are full. The seminars are endless. The templates circulate like relics, and yet the system still stands. Babel has not fallen. Because paperwork on its own is not a sword, it's a whisper on the wind unless it's backed by authority, alignment, and enforcement. The remnant has been led to believe that remedy lies in filing forms, when the truth is forms without a priesthood are empty incantations. So this isn't just a legal war, it's a war of thrones. And thrones are never overturned with documents alone. Well, this document says so you don't belong here, so leave. Sure. What a movement needs is not more filings, it needs a priesthood. In biblical times, the priests didn't just speak to God. They stood between heaven and earth to administer law, sacrifice, judgment, and intercession. Serious. They understood covenant, ceremony, purity, and power. They weren't theorists. They were enforcers of spiritual jurisdiction. And until the sovereignty movement raises up men and women who operate in that kind of alignment, who understand the court as both legal and sacred, it will continue to lose battles on both fronts. Yeah. Today's sovereign is often left to navigate courtrooms alone. Russell doesn't have a bunch of sovereign lawyers he can send you that you can pay to help you. They're told to stand in their truth, to assert their living status, to file a lien or a claim. But who trains them? Who walks with them? Who knows the judge's jurisdiction, the county's charter, the venue's structure, the spiritual covering required to survive the courtroom? Very few. Very few. Because there is no priesthood. There is no training ground. There is no order. Everyone is self-appointed, but few are consecrated. That's not how a war is won. The enemy has its own priesthood. Make no mistake. Judges wear black robes for a reason. Believe it or not, they're satanic, and they have no idea. They're following a satanic order. The oaths, the rituals, the silence and formality where they have to raise their hand and swear on things, it's all patterned after occult priestcraft, designed to strip the sovereign of voice and standing unless they know the system's true nature. You don't just need to correct your status. You need to occupy a higher one that can't be undone by a clerk's stamp or a judge's smirk. That means training. That means equipping. That means building a lawful priesthood of sovereign defenders who are fluent in common law, maritime law, trust law, and court procedure, spiritual warfare, and intercessory power. Men and women who can move between realms, legal and spiritual, and stand in all three courts, land, sea, and air. It means teaching not just how to file, but how to endure. Not just how to recite law, but how to carry the weight of it under the fear of God. In the days of ancient Israel, the Levitical priesthood was more than a religious class. It was a divine judiciary. The priests were responsible for interpreting and administering the law of God, the Torah, not merely in temple rituals, but in civil and judicial matters. When disputes arose among the people, they brought their cases to the priests, who judged not based on man's policy, but according to the divine statutes. That's in Deuteronomy. And their word was binding because they stood in proxies for Yahweh's justice. They also handled the sacrificial system, which wasn't just ceremonial, it was legal. Sacrifice was the process by which guilt was transferred, atonement was made, and restoration of standing took place. Without a priest to officiate the offering, the act was invalid. Blood on the altar wasn't just symbolic, it was jurisdictional. And it determined access to God's favor, cleansing from sin, and one's status within the community. In addition, priests were given authority over plague protocol, land redemption, vows, and oaths. If a person made a legal vow, it was the priest who recorded it, verified its legitimacy, and pronounced its binding nature. That's in Leviticus 2. In cases of disease or defilement, it was the priest, not a doctor, who examined the body and determined whether someone was clean, quarantined, or restored to society. That's in Leviticus. That's legal standing, not medical opinion. Even in warfare, the priests held rank. Before battle, the high priest would declare whether God was with the army or not. No king could overwrite that. The priesthood was passive. It was the spiritual and legal backbone of the nation, and without it, the people fell into chaos. Because the courtroom isn't just about remedy, it's about warfare. And the beast is not afraid of your paperwork. It's afraid of your alignment. It's afraid of a sovereign with rank, wisdom, and covering. A sovereign who has been sent, not just self-activated. And until the remnant builds a priesthood, the filings will continue to pile up, and the victories will remain rare. Because Babylon doesn't fear documents, it fears order backed by heaven. If the courts of this world are corrupted, they are, and the declarations of the sovereigns are ignored, then where is the real authority? Where does the remnant turn to when the legal system has been captured and the law twisted into commerce? Well, the answer is not to create another registry, but to raise up kingdom witness. Not a list of names to be monitored, but a body of living souls who walk in covenantal order, spiritual standing, and legal understanding, and who can be called upon not by number, but by office. I'm not talking about building a registry of names. I'm talking about getting a group of people together who are Christian to start praying and interceding. Throughout Scripture, God keeps the true registry, the book of life. That's not just symbolic, that's legal. And it is eternal. And it is His alone to administer. And any attempt to replicate it on earth as a roster of believers is not just foolish, it's dangerous. That's how Babylon enslaves. That's how Rome tracked the underground church. That's how tyrants build lists to kill, tax, or silence. God never called us to mark His people like Pharaoh. He called us to witness His authority through order, justice, and spirit-led governance. So the remnant must shift from the idea of building a registry to building a priesthood and structure of lawful witness. Not to control who's in, but to defend those who stand. A parallel body separate from corporate courts that can adjudicate disputes, confirm land claims, settle oaths, restore marriages, and protect the faithful from being devoured by a lawless legal system. So it's not just a roster, it's a covenantal shield. It's a church. And the early church did not register its members with Caesar, but it ordained elders, appointed judges, and handled spiritual and civil matters internally with wisdom and order. It operated under a higher jurisdiction, not to rebel, but to resist corruption. That's the model. Not a census, but a living remnant structured around truth. The kingdom witness must be built with careful hands. Okay? Not with children, but with seasoned elders, trained advocates, spirit-filled leaders, men and women who can move between the three courts, land, sea, and air, and defend the body without handing it over to Babylon. Those who understand trust law and divine law, who can teach the people how to stand, not just file. Because sovereignty in the kingdom isn't about being left alone. It's about being rightly aligned under no man's contract, but under God's covering. It's about building something that cannot be seized, licensed, or converted into surveillance. No, we do not build a list of Christians. We build a living temple, a priesthood of the remnant, a voice that cries out in the courts, in the communities, and in the heavens. This one is under the king. Sovereignty isn't won with declarations, folks. It isn't secured with syntax. It doesn't come from paperwork, passwords, or personality cults. It comes from wisdom, the kind that sees through the smoke, discerns the system, and refuses to be baited by the rituals of Babylon. The remnant, which is you and me, we must understand this is not a movement of rebellion. It is a movement of recalibration, of returning to what was righteous before it was commercialized, before it was co-opted, before it was turned into a court of sorcery. The enemy knows how to bait the unwise. It gives them just enough truth to make them arrogant, then watches as they stumble into courtrooms with no wrong jurisdiction, the wrong vocabulary, and no spiritual covering. They confuse passion for preparation, emotion for execution, and when they fall and fail, the system records their failure and uses it to discredit the whole. This is how the system, the beast system, maintains the illusion of order by letting the untrained die in public. But the real sovereign does not shout in the street. He does not file frivolously or threaten judges. He is not baited by provocation. The real sovereign is a priest and a strategist, a man or woman who knows how to navigate land, sea, and air without losing their name, their soul, and their God. The real sovereign listens more than they speak, learns more than they post, and understands that timing is as sacred as truth. Wisdom is the weapon the beast fears the most because wisdom unlocks jurisdiction. Wisdom discerns traps. Wisdom builds priesthoods. It knows when the FBI tries to infiltrate your movement. Wisdom refuses to be counted by the system or praised by the crowd. It builds what the world cannot see until the moment it's too late to stop it. And that's how kingdoms rise. Not through noise, but through invisible order that suddenly manifests with power. So we're not here to burn the courts down, guys. We're here to outgrow them, to outclass them, to remind the world that there is a higher jurisdiction and that it cannot be bribed, bought, or bypassed. It can only be entered through truth and ruled by the wise. And this is the final warning. If the sovereignty movement does not grow up, it will be harvested. If it does not build structure, it will collapse. If it does not raise priests, it will raise martyrs. And the time for declarations is over. The time for discipleship, discernment, and divine administration is now. Because the beast doesn't fear rebellion, it expects it. It plans for it. But it fears wisdom-backed authority. It fears the few who see the full board. Now to conclude, the sovereignty movement stands at a crossroads. It can continue as it is, fragmented, passionate, but underprepared. Or it could rise into its true calling, a lawful priesthood equipped to challenge the beast in every court, land, sea, and air. The time for lone rangers is over. The time for echo chambers is over. If the remnant does not organize around wisdom, authority, and spiritual order, the system will crush it. Not with bullets, but with bureaucracy, ridicule, and procedural traps. The enemy is not afraid of your paperwork. It's afraid of your alignment with Jesus Christ. It's afraid of the people who know how to transfer jurisdiction, who know how to stand without reacting, who understand that the courtroom is not a place of performance, it is a place of power. And whoever holds the seat holds the verdict. That's why judges wear black robes, because they represent a priesthood of control. But they were called to a different order. One not built on deception, but on covenant. You guys are. Not on syntax, but on spirit. And now the remnant must decide, hey, will we continue chasing remedy into systems designed to consume us, or will we build the real structure grounded in righteousness, wisdom, and jurisdictional mastery? This war cannot be won with passion. It must be won with priests, scribes, judges, and stewards of the kingdom. We don't need another rally. We need a resurrection of divine order. And the beast has had its reign. So now let the priesthood rise. Now I'm going to leave you with some starting ideas how to begin building the kingdom structure. Number one, you need to form councils, not clubs. Begin by gathering those who are serious about spiritual and legal training. Not to vent about the system, but to study it. These should be people willing to learn scripture, common law and maritime procedure, trust structures, court protocol, and spiritual jurisdiction. This isn't a chat room, it's a council and training. Number two, they need to train all three courts. Train for all three. Each council member must be equipped with land law, property inheritance, natural rights, sea law, commerce, contracts, UCC, and air law, divine authority, covenant, heavenly registry. They better understand the Bible. And this may require inviting trusted teachers, lawyers, or theologians, not to dominate, but to help build curriculum. Number three, establish roles, not titles. No self-anointed prophets or false judges. Use biblical principles. Elders, scribes, intercessors, gatekeepers, every person must be tested and confirmed in character and competence before being allowed to speak on behalf of others. Number four, build ecclesiastical witness tribunals. Begin mediating community, issuing outside of the corporate courts using covenantal witness and binding arbitration. Document land claims, marriage covenants, oaths, and spiritual testimony in witness form, signed by witnesses under oath. This becomes living testimony, not a beast-registered contract. Number five, train advocates to walk beside the untrained. No more sending people into court alone. Train a remnant legal defense body, not recognized by the state, but recognized by the people and heaven. These are not activists, they are sent ones. Number six, separate from the straw man without isolating from the world. Teach the remnant how to interact with the beast system without becoming its property. Learn how to hold land in trust, preserve rights, operate as a living soul, and invoke kingdom law without arrogance or rebellion. And finally, number seven, build quietly, confirm boldly. This cannot be done on live streams. It must be done in quiet, in fellowship, in discernment, in church. Babylon watches. Build with wisdom. And when it is time to act, let the system be stunned by the authority of those who never needed to raise their voice to be heard.
Why do 75% of people feel exhausted all the time? The answer might surprise you. In the 1920s, Standard Oil decided to dive into medicine. They pushed synthetic petroleum into our drugs. Sure, it masked symptoms, but it wrecked our guts. Our good bacteria, which fight off parasites and heavy metals, got wiped out by crude oil. But here's the good news. We can fix this by going back to nature. Introducing Elite Potion, the world's top detox program. It restores your good bacteria by removing toxic threats like aluminum, strontium, barium, and parasites. Imagine feeling energized and alive again. They said there couldn't be a pill that did it all. We invented it. Visit elitepotion.com and reclaim your health from synthetic pharmaceuticals. Your body will thank you.
This has been Cause Before Symptom with your host, James Carner. Go to his website, jamescarner.com, and sign up for his newsletter. Also, download his free books on the breath war, the crown of blood, and the ritual machine. Fix your body by buying his award-winning detox formula of heavy metals and parasites. You'll feel better and live longer. Go to elitepotion.com. And one more thing, please. Just try and love your neighbor, because if you do, the world would be a better place. See you tomorrow.